I've gotten a ton of letters and questions from people who are in relationships that they know aren't good for them, but they don't know how to leave, or if they ever can, or even if they should. In this episode of Ask Dr. Abby, I'm coming at you with a whole new way to think about these types of relationships. So if you've been struggling, you are in the right place. So stay tuned. Welcome back to the podcast. Wonderful to have you here as always. I am your ever-loving host, Dr. Abby Medcalf. Whew, we are getting up there with the episodes. We're getting close to 200. We're going to be there. I'm really excited. So I'm, again, so excited for today. I know, I'm always so excited, but I am again, because this is a question that I'm going to read to you today that gets asked a lot in a lot of different ways. This just seemed to cover a lot of ground. And I always like when people are giving me sort of specifics when you write in that I think could relate to a lot of people. So yeah, and it's, you know how hard it is when you've got this relationship going on and you've been waffling and wondering and all the things. So I'm really going to go over a lot today, and I'm definitely going to be coming at you with a whole new approach to how to think about these kinds of relationships when you're struggling. And, you know, if you want a little weekly dose of helping you stay on the right track, a wonderful thing to do, besides listen to me here every week, is to sign up for my Relationships Made Easy weekly. It's a weekly newsletter. It comes out, and I try to keep it pretty short, and it's really the intention is to keep our relationship going, is to help you in yet another way focus on where you want to go, not where you don't want to go, and to really help inspire and motivate you for at least that day, if not the week. So if you're, up for that, just go to the website, sign up. It's really easy. There's literally up in the bars on top, the tabs on top, one of them says newsletter. So, and I'm going to be changing the name to the Relationships Made Easy Weekly, because that's really what it is. It's about how to make your relationships easy in a weekly readable format. So I'm going to read the letter. Get ready. Here we go. It's a little bit long, but it's not that long, but I just want you to really listen for yourself in this if you're listening, because if you're listening right now, you've got something going on. So it says, Abby, I've been listening to your podcast for a few weeks now. I've absorbed so much. Help me through my journey. I have a very long, complicated love story that has ended in divorce, an attempt at reconciliation, and addiction. And I do want to say that this person is talking about addiction, but the stuff I'm going to be talking about today, it doesn't matter if the person you're struggling about staying in a relationship with or not is an addict or not. That this just happens to be in this case. And she says, like 5 years ago, she learned that her husband had been doing meth recreationally, if there is such a thing, is what she said, which I agree with. I don't know if you do recreational meth, a little cocaine here and there maybe, but I don't usually hear about recreational meth. Anyway, I'm very naive about drug use and had no clue what was causing the changes in our relationship. It was a rough and rocky few years. Eventually we split, all the assets, and we were planning to divorce, but that went on for 3 years. Neither of us wanted to be divorced, but his changes when he was using were more than I could handle. I gave him chance after chance. My coping skills were not stellar, so, it's great she's taking little responsibility for herself here. I mostly just ran away when he did or said something that hurt. I hid out. I ceased communication. Since then, I've, learned a lot through my counseling, my values, how to communicate better, establishing healthy boundaries, right? I'm in a much better place and have better tools to deal with our relationship, the divorce, and our post-relationship. So after our divorce, I thought I had made a mistake. I still feel like I made a mistake. How many of you listening right now maybe did divorce or did separate and you feel like you made a mistake? My ex stalled the divorce at every avenue, not turning in paperwork, delaying mediation, etc., because he loved me and didn't want to be divorced. Since the divorce, we've tried to see each other. I'm guilty of hurting. They do have kids together, by the way. She says later, which I didn't really include, but since the divorce, we've tried to see each other. I'm guilty of hurting him during these times. I know I need to let go. My ex and I had a conversation about his meth use recently, and he said, my friends can all get high. Why can't I get high? And I heard this as my cue to let go, but I can't. And again, I really think it's why I'm reading this letter. think so many of you could relate to this, that you feel like you've gotten those signals to let go and you just don't feel like you can let go. We've known each other since we were 6 years old. We've been best friends and high school sweethearts. We're soulmates, each other's person. We're meant to be together. Yep. How many of you think that? Like, this is my person. I just know it. This is who I'm supposed to be with. She says, I guess my question is, after his comment about meth use and wanting to get high and me not liking the person he is when he is high, do I walk away? I have seen the personality change, the paranoia. I've tried to explain to him how he's different, but he doesn't see it or believe it. Over the years, I've learned to tell when he's high and when he's not. And any of you who have dealt with addicts or are living with an addict or anything, when they're using. It's always pretty obvious. When we just recently had a great weekend, dinner, cooking, walks, couldn't have been better. Today, though, I can tell he got high at lunch. He attacked me with his words. The same thing I've been hearing for 5 years. I'm having an impossible time letting him go, even though I believe for myself and my values and my health, it's the right thing to do. I appreciate your podcast, your wisdom, and your humor. Thank you. I really don't know if I have a question or if there isn't an answer. There's a question, and there are some answers. And there's a lot here, right? There's a lot here to unpack. So, and I actually didn't, usually I give names, right? So let's call her Miranda and him Steve. Just in case I wrote that down so I remember. There's a lot here. And so I'm going to, so I'm going to address this from a lot of different angles. And again, yes, he's a using addict, and that does have some specific things, but this is, again, for anyone who's in a relationship that likely isn't good for them, and you kind of know that, but you just can't find the motivation to leave. And there are definitely some special issues that can happen that are a little different with drugs and alcohol and with mental health issues, any mental health issues, any other ones, but I'm going to give you some broad stuff. So here are my thoughts. And it is different than what how most people approach this. Most people try to convince you that you should leave, right? And I think I did in my earlier days of being a psychologist or a therapist. I would, give all the reasons why. It's not like you don't already know all the reasons why you should go. I could, certainly have a healthier, happier relationship. This isn't good for me. It's breaking down my self-esteem. I mean, all the reasons why. I don't have to repeat them to you. But the fact is you haven't left and you're not finding the motivation to do so. So I say, if you can't leave, or if you've tried and you keep coming back, then you need to focus on where you are, not where you want to be right now, and not beat yourself up. Okay. So, but some things need to change right where you are. And that's what we're going to go over today. Okay. And I've got a bunch of little things to tell you about this. So let me have a sip of water first. Hold on. So you can stay. You are staying. So, but you've got to change your entire way of thinking about this relationship if you want to be happy, calm, and sane. So first things first, you have to stop trying to control or change them. They're fine. They're fine in their world. Steve here, who, this Miranda's husband in this letter, he's fine. He doesn't want to get divorced. He's doing a little meth on the weekends. He doesn't see a problem. It's Miranda that's in pain. It's Miranda that's upset. So, and that means, what do I always say? The one of the most pain needs to change first. So that's you. You need to focus on your own change, not on the other person. So you have to stop trying to change them. You have to stop trying to control them and what they're doing. You've got to shift your focus. You already know this, because if it worked, you wouldn't be listening right now. So you're going to leave that alone. And don't get mad at me yet. I've got a lot to say. So the next thing I want you to think about is focusing on. So you're not focusing on them. Guess what you should be focusing on? You. And the first things first is to broaden your life as much as possible. So you're not putting so much emphasis on this relationship. I want you to think of broadening your life. A lot of people in these situations, the reason I think it's part of the reason even that they're not leaving is because this is their only person. Like, maybe your kids have gone away to college, or you don't have kids or whatever, and this is your person. You haven't been talking to your friends for years. I don't know. Miranda's known this guy since she was 6. You got to stop right now and start to broaden, like, new hobbies, new activities without your partner. You can invite them if you want. You can say, hey, I'm going to start doing yoga on Tuesday nights. If you want to come, you're welcome. You can do that. But you go no matter what. Find new friends. Broaden your life. Do new things. Talk to new people. Go on meetups. I mean, you know what meetups are, hopefully. I think they're everywhere. Meetups are, groups that get together and, they all knit, or they all go to a show, or they all whatever. It's not meant to be something where you find a partner. It's meant to be something where you find things to do that you like with other people who like to do these things. So broaden your horizons. That's what's here now. If you're busy doing those things, guess what? You won't be staring at them and upset that they're not doing the things you want. So that's really going to help you. The next thing, you got to stop beating yourself up for staying. It's not helping. It's not helping. If it was helping, I'd say have at it. You know me. But it's not helping for you to be beating yourself up. Why am I staying? I'm so crazy. And I know all your friends and your family are telling you to go because you've been complaining to them, and they're all on you. They're all telling you you're doing it wrong. And I'm not here to say that to you. I am here to say that you are doing the best with the tools you have, and here you are, and I'm going to love you right where you are. I'm going to love you right where you are because I accept you for who you are and where you are. I'm not saying we don't want to change that later, but right now it's really about accepting it now. And I don't have an agenda that you change it later. You might live the rest. I've had plenty of clients live the rest of their lives this way very happily, the way I'm teaching you right now. So I'm going to highly suggest, highly, my Jewish mother bossy way means go do it, that you learn more about self-compassion. Okay. You've got to go deep on that. I have a whole wonderful podcast episode on it. There's Kristen Neff is the queen of it. You can go to her website. She wrote a great book last June, I think, Fierce Self-Compassion for Women. And if you're a man, I think you can read it too. But there's plenty of self-compassion courses. Stanford here in California, now it's online, has a whole compassion leg of what they do, and they have a program. It's wonderful. There's just so many ways you could practice compassion. So, and I have a loving kindness meditation that's free. I'll link to that in the show notes. You could also find it on YouTube on my, Abby Medcalf loving kindness meditation. Boom. You can listen to that every day. The research shows that listening to a loving kindness meditation will absolutely help you with your self-compassion. There's a lot of things you can do, but you're going to need to start loving yourself where you are and stop beating yourself up, because it's not helping anyone. It's not helping you. It's not helping your relationship. It's certainly not helping you move or do anything different. So it's time to really love on yourself as you are and have some more self-acceptance for where you are. And I also just recently did an episode on self-acceptance. How do you like that? So you could listen to that too. My next little tip here is, it's really, we say in the 12-step program, take what you want and leave the rest. And that's what I would tell you to start doing as you approach your relationship in this whole new mindset. You want to take what you want and leave the rest. So as Miranda was saying, she had this great hike and they had this lovely day and it was wonderful and they couldn't have gotten along better. And then, after lunch, he was high. So I would say, take what you want. That's great. Have the walk, do all the wonderful things, and then leave the rest. He got high after lunch. That's something else. I'm not hanging out with you anymore. Just separate those out. Stop, again, focusing on the things that aren't working, and just, be in what you can, get what you can out of the relationship, because there's likely something here is the reason you're staying. I don't know what it is, but there's likely something. In Miranda's case, it seems like there's a lot. They have a lot of history. They have children. They have, this deep love of each other. And so, okay, and they seem to have fun still together. Other people who have written into me, talk about really abusive kind of relationships. And I do want to say, with all that I'm saying right now, if you are being abused, that is a whole other level. If, and I want you to get into therapy immediately. I want you to talk to someone immediately. This podcast is not for you. If you are being literally abused right now, this is not where you need to be. I should have said that in the beginning. But if you are in a relationship where, there's just a lot of things that you don't think are good for you, and you still stay, then keep listening. So, because this next piece is that it's all about acceptance. This is the way this person is. This is who they are. If you're with someone who, maybe you're with someone who has cheated on you and you think they might be cheating now. Well, you're not going to make them stop. You've already tried and you have not been successful. Plus you're not leaving. So they know that they can cheat and you'll stay. So you've taught them that. And I'm not saying that in a mean way. I'm just saying that in an honest, clear way. Whatever you've been allowing, Miranda's been allowing Steve to use drugs all this time and staying with him, so he can use drugs and stay with her. Why would he stop? It's, that's how it is. And it's not about these people not loving you enough or whatever else. It's not about them. It's about you. You have chosen to stay with this person. You have, in whatever way. So I would say that in that case, again, you got to accept this is what might be happening. I don't know for sure, but it might. I don't need to go check their Instagram. I don't need to stalk them. I don't need to check their emails. I need to ignore it and focus on what I am getting, which I hope is something if you're staying. And focus what is working. And that's all I can do right now. So, because right now, just be in the moment. Maybe later you'll have new tools. You'll be able to do different things. But right now you got to accept where it is if you ever want to change or move. And what you do want to do, of course, is, stop focusing on the other person and just, identify and hold your boundaries. That's your job. So that, so with Miranda and Steve, again, if you think he's using, don't hang out. But don't ask Steve if he's using. Don't ask your partner if they're doing something. Don't go into it. It's just a struggle. And you're not going to convince them of anything, so why try? If anything, they'll probably tell you you're crazy. They'll probably be gaslighting you the other way. So you just end up feeling horrible. So why would we go there, right? Why would you put yourself in that situation? So you need to extricate yourself from whatever that problem is and be with where it is now. And again, be focusing on yourself. What are you doing? So, if you get yourself all caught up, I got to check, their email. I have to know if they're doing something or whatever, stop yourself. Get mindful. Stop yourself. What can you do right now? I could go for a walk. I could call a friend. I could, blow off some steam at the gym. I could, whatever. Just try not to do anything self-destructive, but, might be a cookie. I don't know. So, but it's got to be about you. All right. So the next thing that I want to talk about is that you have to be aware that whatever you don't like about your partner is going to get worse over time. This is what happens with issues people have. They get more entrenched, not less. Okay. They get more entrenched. So if what you're not liking is, narcissism or cheating or drug or alcohol use, or, if you're in this really unhealthy relationship, and you're listening right now with some sort of craziness going on where you're not being treated the way you want to be treated, then whatever is going on, when people act in that way, there's something else. I can't diagnose from afar. I can't even say that Steve is a drug addict. I don't know if he is. I'm using that language, but I can't diagnose him. I don't know. Just using meth is not enough to make a diagnosis. But when she talks about personality changes and some other things, it makes me obviously very suspicious. Continued use, despite negative consequences. He definitely has, just from the email, lots of signs. But again, I've never met him. I don't know him, so I'm not diagnosing. But I'm just kind of using this language. In any of these cases, people have some form of entrenched, unhealthy behavior that, again, over time, as you stay in the relationship, is going to get worse. So you got to know that. In the case of being in a relationship with an addict, you got to know that this is a chronic, progressive disease. It's going to get worse in some way. That might mean their personality changes more, over time, or their use gets worse, so they lose their job, or maybe have legal issues that impact you, or go into debt, or, all the things. So it's going to get worse. It's not going to stay this way. Not every, there's lots of functional alcoholics out there or functional addicts out there. But it stops being as functional as they get older. And again, so they might still keep a job, but their personality gets meaner and meaner, or more disconnected, or more depressed. Something's going to happen. Again, it's chronic and it's progressive. So it's going to happen. And I do want to just say a quick word about addiction here. I'm going to just jump in because, as you all know, I'm a recovering addict and this is a specialty of mine. So, and I'll just do this quickly because many listening, this is not it, but this is good information either way for you. Addiction is really a disease. In 1956, the American Medical Association designated it as a disease because it fit all the criteria to call something a disease. There's anatomical alteration. In the case of addiction, it's in the brain. It's progressive. It has identifiable signs and symptoms. There's very specific things that we use to say this thing is a disease. Now, I'm positive some people right now are listening thinking addiction isn't a disease because it's a choice to drink or use a drug, right? No one, when you first started, no one was forcing you to do it, likely, right? So in those cases, you might see it as the person choosing to use over your relationship or over, how much they love their kids. I hear all kinds of things, and that's not true. While I'll agree with you that in the very early stages of addiction, there's definitely some choice, okay, for sure, right? Very early stages before the brain has been altered, before it's been hijacked, there are choices. However, what we now know is that the brain is physically changed by continued use and addiction, right? Physically changed to the point that the person can't really decide anymore because they're losing control. They no longer have control in the same way other people do. And I want to say also, choice doesn't determine if you call something a disease anyway. I might have smoked and ate fatty foods for years, resulting in heart disease, but guess what? So my choices leading up to that don't affect whether we call it a disease or not. It's not heart disease just because I chose to smoke and drink and eat burgers for years, right? I could get cancer because I chose to smoke cigarettes for decades or spend years in the sun without sunscreen, but guess what? I still got a disease and it's called cancer. A disease is what happens in somebody's body or brain as a result of the choices they've made. And then it really takes on a life of its own. So again, it doesn't mean we can't arrest it or stop it, but it remains chronic. So I just do want to say that, but as a separate aside. So getting back to everybody. So the other thing I'm going to tell you is that and this is related to really what I started with, you have to continue to work on yourself. Go to therapy if you can afford it. Listen to my wonderful podcasts and do the actions I suggest. I always have tips and things at the end. You got to do the actions. If you can join a support group, don't just complain to your best friends and your family though. That's not actually helping you. Sign up for my weekly newsletter that I mentioned earlier. Get yourself pointed in the right direction every week, whatever. Your goal is to be happier regardless of what this other person is doing. And once that happens, you'll have a more clear mind when it comes to making decisions about what to do in the relationship. This is why I want to be clear about why you need to start here. So I've talked about this so much, but remember, when you're caught up in fear, so here I am with this partner, I don't think I can leave, I'm terrified of leaving, I'm going to make a mistake. Even Miranda still thinks she made a mistake by divorcing Steve. So remember, when you're caught up in fear, what gets triggered? Your amygdala, that fight, flight, or freeze response. And I want to remind you that when your amygdala is lit up, when this part of your brain, the fear process in your brain has taken over, your brain literally changes. And so it doesn't remember things as well. You start to, like what's happening here, she's starting to think she's made a mistake. You might start to romanticize how great the relationship is. And, I'm making too big a deal out of this, because I've talked about this in so many other podcasts. I don't want to get in too deep a detail here, but because all the changes that happen in the brain when it's with the fear brain, one of those results is that your hippocampus shrinks and shrivels from the stress-inducing hormones, and it doesn't remember. That's where you remember things and store memories. It doesn't do it as well. The other thing to keep in mind is that when your amygdala is activated, when this whole, when your limbic system is lit up, this other part of your brain, your prefrontal cortex, where all your rationality is, where you're problem solving, where you're thinking things through, that part of your brain is shut down. It can't even turn on. So here you are wondering, why can't I make a decision? Why can't I change what I'm doing? Why can't I, why do I keep doubting myself? All that stuff. It's because your brain is hijacked during all this. It can't function in the way you want. But when you do the things I've been saying, guess what? When you start to get happier, when you're less focused on them, when you're less triggered, your brain is going to start healing. And you are going to be able to make more rational decisions later. So that's the key. And that is why all the, again, when people tell you all the rational reasons why you should go, I could talk to Miranda like, oh, you'll find someone else. Of course you will. You're fabulous. It's not even about being with someone else. It's about really being in a healthy place and not allowing yourself, it sounds like Steve kind of verbally abuses her when he's not acting, when he's high, you don't deserve these things, blah, 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 right? We could tell her. So when I do all those great suggestions, guess what? That's all prefrontal cortex. That's where all that comes in. My prefrontal cortex has to be turned on to take in the information, to go, does that make sense? Is that the rational thing to do? Let me problem solve that. Let me long-term plan. Let me think this through. If that part of your brain's not working, then properly, then all these great suggestions just fall. You're like Teflon for good suggestions, and you get then frustrated with yourself for not being able to move, for not being able to change, and you're beating yourself up. So as we do the steps I said before, you will find a new place to be. And you might end up staying, but you're going to stay in a very different way. You're going to stay out of choice, not because out of fear, which is a love decision, not a fear decision, right? Right now, Miranda is staying in this relationship and being with this man because she's afraid. All of her language is fear-based, right? And, you're afraid of what will happen if you leave. You have this idea, he's my only one, my soulmate. I talked about this in an earlier podcast. We got lots of soulmates. Like that is just crazy language. I say with love, Miranda, she's not crazy, but that's language that's fear-based. There's scarcity. There's one person, and if I blow it, I'm screwed. That is not how the world works. There's lots of opportunities all the time. No. That's not staying with someone out of love. That's staying with them out of fear, right? So we're not doing that anymore. So again, do the things so that you can stop being in a fear-based mindset, so you can start thinking clearly. You can start really using your brain. Then from there, you can make new decisions. Because if you can't stay miserable or trying to get them to stop or change whatever behavior you don't like. Now, I'm not saying it is okay to tell them how their behavior affects you. You can do that, but that's it. And I have all kinds of there's a very specific way to do that. And I have an episode on how to give great feedback. I'll link to it in the show notes. I talk a lot about not sacking. You could use the I feel statement, the I feel formula. I feel when you and I need. You could just do it that way. That's really my highest suggestion actually for this. And I will actually link to the I feel formula on the website. How's that for love? Because it's really a great exercise if you want to let them know how they're affecting you, but just want to keep it still with your boundary and not trying to change them and not getting all into an argument or anything else, but just giving them feedback like that, which will be the most effective. Then you want to use the I feel formula. So I will link to that on the show notes page, abbymedcalf.com/podcast. I will link to it there so you can just download it. Okay, there you go. And that does put you on my weekly newsletter list. How do you like that? So if you download it, that's what happens. I don't spam you with stuff. I send one email a week, for God's sakes, with a lot of love. So, and if you don't like it, just unsubscribe. Download your thing and unsubscribe. I'm not hurt. I don't know it's you. I don't go look and see who unsubscribed. Don't worry about it. So it's fine. Okay. The other thing I want you to be focused on is identifying and keeping your boundaries. And this, again, will all come from doing the work on yourself and focusing on yourself. But you've got to identify your boundaries and you have to then keep them. So, if you act this way to me, I will leave the room. I will go sleep somewhere else. I will hang up the phone. If you do this, here's what I'm going to do. And then you got to do it. Okay? Then you have to do it. Don't, like in this case with Miranda, I would not, and anybody who's got someone, maybe they gaslight you or something, do not focus on what they're like. So it's not, if you're high, then I'm going to do X. That's not what you're saying. You're just saying, right? Don't do that. Don't link it, because then they'll argue that they're using or not using, or that they weren't gaslighting you or whatever else. Right? That's not it. So you just want to get clear. Like if you use this kind of language with me, I'm going to hang up the phone, whatever that is. If you act in this way, with me, or say something to me, or use a certain tone with me, I will, and then name what the response is. So again, don't say, when you're gaslighting me, I'm going to do this. Don't do that. When you're using, I'm going to do this. Don't label them. Don't diagnose, none of that. You just want to go to what the behavior is. If when you speak to me in an argumentative tone, when you yell at me, if you raise your voice to me, I'm going to do X, Y, and Z. That's what you do. And then you have to do it. And what this does is it takes out of, by taking out the diagnosing of them, the labeling of them, it stops a lot of the arguing with you, because otherwise they're just arguing with you about that, not about their behavior, about what's really the problem, right? They're arguing with you. Everybody becomes a lawyer. And instead, doing it the way I just said brings you to the real issue, which is how they treat you, right? That's really what's at the bottom of all this. And that's really what I would say, no matter what else, is what I want you to focus on. It doesn't really matter, for example, if someone's using drugs. It matters, or drinking. It matters if it affects you, right? So I would even say this with cheating. I've said this before. If you think your person is cheating, right? I think my person is cheating, but when they're with you, they are loving and kind. They follow through on what they say. They always show up for you. They, all the things. I don't know why you care if they're cheating. Like at some point you have to, and you might hate this and you might not want to hear this, but I'm going to say it anyway. Get over this idea that they're doing something and you're trying to control it. Get to how you like to be treated. In a day-to-day way. How do you want them to talk to you? How do you want to interact? And then you need to take responsibility, not them. Stop putting it on them. It is not their job to hold your boundary. That is your job. Your job to hold your boundary. Stop complaining about them. Stop being frustrated about them. This is you. I say with all the love in my heart, I do, because I know you can do this. And if you don't take responsibility, you are not going to be happy. And I want you to be happy so, so bad. And I know you can be, even in an unhealthy relationship. I know you can be, because it is not our circumstances that make us happy or not. It is us. There are people, I have had people, God, I've worked with people in abject poverty. I have a person I'm working with right now, who is living in his car. I mean, I can't even go into all the bad things that have happened to this lovely man. And he's living in his car. And he is taking responsibility for his life. And he is figuring it out, because it's not, obviously that sucks and it's going to affect your day to day. But if you heard his attitude, it's why I'm working with him. He's like so positive, and he is getting himself out of that situation, because actually he was homeless before, but he got a car and now he's living in the car. We're moving up. He keeps sort of improving his situation. He keeps figuring out what he can do next. He can't do everything, but he can do one thing next. What is that one thing? It's really, when you take responsibility for your life, you stop focusing on all the things outside of you and start focusing on what you're doing. It's not what other people are doing, it's what you're doing. And sticking to that. And so don't make promises to yourself that next time, he does this, I'm leaving. Next time, stop that, because you haven't left. So stop that. Stop breaking your word to yourself, and stop training this other person that no matter what they do, you'll stay. Instead, have some self-compassion, get to some self-acceptance in this moment, and instead focus on what you can do right now. What can you do in this situation? And that is hold a boundary, make a boundary, be loving to yourself, be kind. It's all the things I talk. Focus on yourself. Every time you notice yourself focusing on them, focus on you. These are the things you can do. Okay. Woo! So that is it for today. We were at it, weren't we? We went in there. I think this probably surprised you in my angle of all this, how I come at this issue. But it's really the way I want you to start thinking about this. Again, no matter what your problem is in your relationship, no matter what you're struggling with, you kind of have to start with these steps so you can get to a place where you can think clearer and have a better understanding and a better way of looking and problem solving and what your options are. You're not going to get there from that really fear-based place. You can only get there from, again, getting to that better place, and then, from there, making different decisions. All right. I love you so much. I have complete faith in your ability to do this, or I would not be spending this time talking to you. I love you. I want you to have a week filled with self-compassion, self-acceptance, and even some laughter. Have a great week, and I'll talk to you soon.